Take this job and shove it.
Welcome. This is JobCast Radio, and I am Mike Baumgartner, your Work-Life Survival Sage, the Chief Executive Officer of the Work-Life Survival Center, and your host. If you've got a problem at work, if you need some advice about how to deal with a boss who is just being a jerk, HR has called you in. There's something wrong happening around the workplace. There's some policy that you think is illegal. You think they're asking you to do too much, or you think you're about to be fired. This is the resource where you can find out if they're being good or if they're just being a classic evil corporation. This is JobCast Radio, where you can feist to getting, keeping, and surviving your job. And I am your host. I have been doing this for well over 20 years, been an HR professional, a recruiter, and I have all of the answers that you need on how to get, keep, and survive your job. Give me a call. It is 304-867-4142. Again, 304-867-4142. You can check me out on the web, worklifesurvival.com or jobcastradio.com, and you can always shoot me an email, mike@jobcastradio.com. Well, Valentine's Day is coming, and honestly, love is in the air, and we've been talking about love basically in the workplace quite a bit here at JobCast Radio because, let's face it, it happens. People fall in love at work. And since Valentine's Day is coming, I thought it would be best to spend this episode talking about all the things that can go right and all the things that can go wrong at work, especially when you find a significant other, or at least an interest in a significant other in the workplace. In fact, I wrote my blog article this week on about finding love at work, a survival guide. Now, statistics show that about 80% of us have gotten into a relationship with someone at work. I think that number is higher. More than 60% of us end up marrying someone that we met at work. Now, I also think that that is somewhat higher. Why? Well, let's face it. We spend 45, 50, 60 hours a week at work meeting and working with the same people. For those of you who end up talking to customers or ending up, out on the road meeting clients and things like that, you are interacting with people even more than when you go home. Now, you may have a wonderful social life outside of the office. You may be going out every night, but that's usually 3 or 4 hours a night, or you spend a couple of hours on the weekend going out and meeting or dating somebody. You actually have more opportunity at work to meet someone and an easier way to get to know them at work than you do in real life. Because walking up to somebody at Starbucks and saying, "Excuse me, can I get your number?" Wow, that is, brave and bold for a lot of you guys. Most of us don't do that. And ladies, that's even a rare number. We tend to do this at work. Why? Because we're working with people. We're not having a conversation. We're not looking to meet somebody at work. Well, we might be, but we're not intentionally trying to get to know somebody. We interact with people. We meet them in the cafeteria 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It's easy to find them at work if you know what department they happen to be in. You get to know each other. You get to know what you like or you don't like, and you end up getting interested. And inevitably, you end up going out and things start happening at the workplace. That's not a bad thing. However, there are some people who really wished you never, ever did that. Those people would be, usually your boss, and always the human resource department. Now, the human resource department, let me just explain, would prefer that everybody that worked in the company was a robot built by Disney that did everything exactly as they were told. In fact, Disney had it right. Don't hire actors, you build them, because they're consistent, and if they break down, you just fix them. But I've never seen a robot get arrested for sexual harassment unless it's been programmed to do so. So HR would prefer that you be a non-human in the workplace, but you are. You will meet people, you'll like each other, and things will start happening. So I have some rules that you may want to think about in my blog article at jobcastradio.com that you may want to think about following. Now, if you are looking to meet somebody at work, not bad. If you are getting a job for the sole purpose of meeting somebody, remember there are people who are immediately out to prevent you from doing this. Why? because inevitably relationships, more often than not, go bad. In fact, I would estimate that 0.03% of relationships at work actually survive. And then what do you have when you have a relationship that has gone bad in the workplace? You have two people who hate each other having to work with each other, or at least see each other in the hallway. And quite frankly, when you're walking down the hallway and you see somebody that you used to be dating, but you're not, that person is wishing on you some sort of horrible, rotten, cancerous, skin ugly disease. Because, why? They're unhappy. They want you unhappy. Such is love at the workplace. So here's a couple of rules for you. Rule number 1. If the person you like is in your department, let's say you are in the tax department, and there's several people in there of the tax department, and one of them you really, really like, and there's 6 of you in the department, and you think you want to start dating them. If they're in your department, don't assume that they are your sister or at least a first cousin, and such would be incredibly morally ugly wrong. Think that kissing this person will give you a disease that will last you for the rest of your life. Your teeth will fall out and you will be a hideous monster. Why do I say this? Because if the relationship goes bad, it will go really, really bad. Can you imagine? Think of it this way. Let's say that you like dogs. And let's say you find this really cute Great Dane puppy that you just love. Now, you happen to live in a 6 by 6 by 6 foot box. That Great Dane is going to grow and is going to be very, very big, and it's going to fill your little box. And if all of a sudden you discover that that Great Dane doesn't like you, and you decide that you don't like the drool and the poop all in your 6 by 6 by 6 foot box, you're stuck in that box with that Great Dane. That is what life is like if you're in a relationship with somebody that goes bad in your department, which is why some companies even go as far to have policies that say, if you want to date somebody, you can. Don't do it in your department. Now, that's not a rule. It's not against the law. There may be some policies against it. Check your handbook. But remember, my advice, if he or she is in your department, don't do it. Find somebody, rule number 2, that is at least on a different floor, or ideally in a different building if you happen to work for a company that has multiple buildings. Why? Because then you can just sort of magically pop over and say, hey, I just happen to be in the area. Hello. You can run into each other at the employee cafeteria if you have one. You can meet each other. You can date. It's fine. But when you're working, you really don't see each other unless you actually get on an elevator or walk out of the building to go and see that individual. Why? Because, again, if it goes bad, it's easier to avoid an entire floor of a building or another building altogether rather than be in the same box that you may be with somebody who you don't like, or worse yet, doesn't like you. Also, if he or she happens to be your boss, or you happen to be the boss over somebody, I have lots and lots of episodes of Jobcast Radio that will explain to you exactly why this is, while not traditionally illegal, probably in every single company known to man, there is a policy that says you do not get involved with somebody you have control over. And that's anywhere in the food chain. So if you're dating your boss, bad. Don't. If you're dating your boss's boss, while amusing and, may have its rewards from time to time in such a powerful situation, that's even worse. You don't want to be in your boss's bad side because you happen to be dating his boss. Really, really bad idea. And there are policies that go against that as well. You don't want anyone to have control over you, and you don't want to have control over somebody you happen to be dating. Also, if you happen to be a player, well, let me step back before we get into the player conversation. Again, about the boss, It's going to be against policy. If you think HR is going to smile and allow you to date somebody in authority, not going to happen. Also, most policies say that if you end up dating someone on the food chain that you happen to be in, one of you will have to leave the company or be transferred. If you are dating your boss, odds are it's going to be you who's going to be either kicked to the curb or moved or transferred. Now, they may end up jumping all over the boss, writing him up, and he may end up losing his job if it's a relationship that has really been going on for a while. But you cannot have that relationship. Just don't do it. It's crazy. Now, again, rule number 1, 2, 3, learn from them if you happen to be a player. If you're a player who's going into a business and you think you're going to be dating 3, 4, 5 women, you are not going to survive at all. I'll explain that more when we get back.
Take this job and shut it.